One day, a blind man named Jack entered the building of a famous perfume company in New York, hoping to apply for a job. When he reached the reception desk, the receptionist, Ms. Adams, kindly asked,
"Good afternoon. How can I help you?"
"I'd like to apply for a job as a perfumer," Jack replied confidently. Ms. Adams was a little hesitant, given that this job relied heavily on the sense of smell.
"Are you sure? This job depends on being able to smell very well."
"I know," Jack said. "Trust me. My sense of smell is very sharp even though I'm blind. Give me a chance to prove it." Ms. Adams, intrigued, took Jack to the perfume laboratory and introduced him to Mr. Harper, the company's chief perfumer. Mr. Harper, curious and skeptical, decided to test Jack's abilities.
"All right, Jack. I'm going to give you some samples of complicated scents. If you can recognize them correctly, you'll get the job."
Jack nodded confidently. Mr. Harper began giving Jack various scent samples. Jack smelled each sample carefully, then named the ingredients it contained very precisely. "Lavender, a hint of vanilla, and musk," Jack said to the first sample. Mr. Harper was surprised.
"That's right. Let's try another one."
After a few more samples, Jack was never wrong. All the ingredients and blends he mentioned were spot on. Finally, Mr. Harper handed him a bottle of the perfume they had just developed and said,
"This is our newest perfume. Can you recognize the ingredients?"
Jack smelled the bottle deeply, wrinkled his nose, and said, It's a mix of rose, jasmine, and... Wait, there's something strange. There's a bit of an unusual aroma like that of green apples." Mr. Harper was surprised and smiled.
"That's right. That's our secret touch for this perfume. Excellent, Jack."
Ms. Adams, very impressed with Jack's ability, informed the owner of the company, Mr. Thompson. Hearing about this amazing person, Mr. Thompson wanted to test how good Jack's sense of smell was. He went to his wife, Emily, who had just finished taking a shower. He said,
"Emily, please rub this bottle on your crotch."
Emily laughed, but did as her husband asked. Mr. Thompson then went back to Jack and gave him the bottle. Jack took the bottle, smelled it, then smiled and said, "Wow, I didn't know Emily worked here." Mark Johnson entered the courtroom nervously. This whole divorce process felt like a never-ending nightmare. Judge Parker looked at him seriously, ready to start the proceedings. "So, Mr. Johnson, you really want a divorce?" asked Judge Parker. Mark nodded firmly.
"Yes, Your Honor. I've already decided."
Judge Parker leaned back in his chair. "No regrets?" Mark took a deep breath.
"Not at all, Your Honor. I just can't take it anymore. Who can stand a wife who goes out to bars, clubs, and karaoke every night?"
Judge Parker frowned. "Does she get drunk a lot?"
"No, Your Honor."
Mark replied. "Does she enjoy partying or dancing?"
"No, Your Honor."
Mark said, shaking his head. Judge Parker was getting more and more confused. "Then, what does he do at bars, clubs, and karaoke every night?" Mark took a deep breath before answering.
"He was looking for me, Your Honor. I was embarrassed in front of my friends."
Judge Parker was stunned for a moment before letting out a long breath. "All right, Mr. Johnson, I think I understand your problem." In a small church in America, a pastor was giving a Sunday sermon on the theme, "Forgive Your Enemies." After a long sermon, he asked the congregation, "How many of you are willing to forgive your enemies?" About half of the congregation raised their hands. Not satisfied, he repeated the question again for another 20 minutes. This time, about 80% of the congregation raised their hands. Still not satisfied, the pastor continued his sermon for another 15 minutes and repeated his question. With stomachs already thinking about Sunday lunch, almost all the congregation raised their hands, except for an elderly lady at the back. "Mrs. Johnson, are you unwilling to forgive your enemies?" he asked.
"I have no enemies."
Mrs. Johnson replied. "Mrs. Johnson, that's very remarkable. How old are you?"
90.
She replied. "Mrs. Johnson, please come forward and tell us how one can live to the age of 90 without having a single enemy." The sweet little lady walked slowly to the front, turned to face the congregation and said,
"It's easy. I just outlived those bastards."
A mother was busy in the kitchen, listening to her 5-year-old son play with his new electric train in the living room. She heard the train stop and her son said,
All you passengers who want to get off now, because this is the last stop. And all you assholes who want to get on, hurry up and get on, because we're leaving again soon.
The mother, horrified by the abusive language, rushed into the living room and said to her son,
In this house, we don't use such language. Now go to your room and stay there for 2 hours. After that, you can play with your train again, but I want you to use good language.
2 hours later, the boy came out of his room and went back to playing with his train. This time, when the train stopped, the mother heard her son say,
Disembarking passengers, please take all your luggage with you. Thank you for traveling with us today. We hope you have a pleasant journey.
Smiling, the mother heard her son continue,
For the new passengers boarding, please keep all your bags under the seats. Remember, no smoking is allowed on the train. We wish you a pleasant journey with us.
However, just as Mom was starting to feel proud, the son added,
And for those of you who are angry about the 2-hour delay, please complain to the bitch in the kitchen.